And hello, everybody. Welcome to Ready, Set, Secure, Set Solutions podcast, recording episode number 33 and our first live stream on LinkedIn. Hope everybody starts joining into the conversation. My name is Michael Farnum, CTO with Set Solutions. Thank you for joining us. And as always, Mr. Justin Hutchens, a.k.a. Hutch. How you doing, Hutch?
Doing great. Broadcasting live from middle of nowhere corn country, Iowa out here.
Well, we joke about it, but I am still glad you found some good internet up there, so you can not weren't in the studio with me today. So, well, thanks for joining. And a new face we have with us, Miss Lauren Lynch. Lauren is our director of marketing, and she is now the producer. Well, has been the producer pretty much, but now that we're doing live, she's going to be producing these shows. How you doing, Lauren?
Great. Thanks for including me.
You are welcome. Thanks for doing this. We're going to have fun with this. So also, as our first special guest on our live stream, Mr. Adam Traylor. Adam is the CISO for Wilsonart. How you doing, Adam?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me on the show. I appreciate being the first live streamer. I guess nobody told you, best idea, but hey, we'll go with it.
Well, Adam, I know you've got some acting background, so I think you should be able to do really well on the first live stream.
Yeah, I hope so. Anyway, hope so.
Yep. Well, like I said, this is we're also recording this at the same time we're doing the live stream. So this is episode 33 of our podcast. So if you don't see this on video or whatever, you can always go listen to it after. But we're going to have video. We're going to have audio recording of it. Really excited to get this started. So I am going to stick to our typical script. If you listen to our podcast, I'll stick to that. We are going to do, after these intros, now we're going to talk about some Set Solutions info real quick. We will be at Black Hat and DEF CON. So Hutch actually is going to be, we announced this last time on our podcast, but Hutch had a talk accepted at the, which village is it, Hutch, at DEF CON?
IoT Village.
IoT Village. So he's talking all about hacking Alexa, and he's been contacted by AWS, so it's pretty interesting. But as we talked like about last time, there's nothing to disclose. He's just doing some really cool stuff with Alexa. So yeah, I'm looking forward to that. Looking forward to seeing everybody at Black Hat DEF CON. If you're going, it should be good. It's going to be interesting to see what all's happening there and who all's going. But please, if you are going, let us know. We're going to have a suite there. We're going to have dinners going on. So if you've got a Set Solutions account manager, let them know that you might want to join up. Then we can get you into some dinners and suites if all that lines up. If not, maybe we can just have some drinks together. Let me know. I'll be out there as well. I'll be out there all the way through Black Hat and DEF CON. So I'm going to be there from the 2nd to the 8th. So I'm going to be really worn out after all that is done. So we've also, as our final Set Solutions segment, we've got some pretty cool things coming up on blog posts from Hutch, Jimmy, and Greg, all coming up. Be on the lookout for that stuff on our blog. Greg Porterfield's blog. I talk about it every single podcast we do, but I just can't get enough of that guy's blogging. He does really good stuff, and his whole journey through going for his OSCP and probably going to end up on Hutch's team at some point. If you don't know, Hutch is our assessment practice manager. So he's doing some really cool stuff. So be on the lookout for that. So normally this is where we would do some bumper music. We'll probably still have that in the podcast, but since we're doing this live, we're just gonna jump right in. So new segment. So this is what we normally do here. I'm going to talk about what Adam brought to us, what Hutch brought to us, and what I brought to us as well. So Adam is going to be talking about building a culture of cybersecurity. He's getting some info from a SANS report that came out around building that info, building that culture of cybersecurity. And then Hutch is going to be talking about the new Petit Potem attack, which is allowing a takeover of entire Windows domains. That one ought to be a little scary. We usually get pretty depressed after Hutch talks about stuff. And then I'll be talking about Kaseya. They say they now have a working decryption key. It does not. Well, I won't even get into it. I don't want to spoil what I was talking about, but it's interesting. There's some questions that come out of it, and I don't know if there's been any news articles that have changed any of that article yet today. So I was hoping some stuff would come out today, and I just haven't looked. So if anybody knows that something has changed in that front, please send us a comment on here. We've got comments open. You should be able to comment, and we can bring those up. Or if you've got questions, we can bring those up as well. So, Adam, let's get into your article. Why don't you tell us why you picked it, what you thought about it, and just kind of your comments, and then we'll get into it.
Yeah. So, I thought one of the things that really drew me to this was it was talking about the security culture, right? Especially, for the past 6 months, we've been hearing a lot about awareness and training. But culture has been, kind of standing off in the shadows when people talk about, security culture within an organization. And I've been championing the idea of security culture for years. That it's a top-down kind of idea. It's something that needs to flow from the top-level executive all the way down, to the newest employee. And so to hear, this article within Security Magazine really kind of draw out the idea of a culture and see that we're starting to get more focus in that area. I thought it was really important to bring to the table and have things to talk about.
Yeah, it's definitely always interesting. I've had many discussions with this over the years about security culture. One of the things I thought was a really important point that they brought up in here, and one of the points is that time is the top challenge for it, not budget. What do you get into that? What do you think about that?
Yeah, and that's as a manager and director, CISO, whatever you want to call it, of a security program, I'm right there with it. That's always been my biggest beef. For me, it's the thing that I love the most. Sitting down, coming up with content, whether it's print, whether it's planning a lunch and learn, or whatever it is, to get the users involved and activated and engaged, right? And it's always the thing that ends up at the bottom of the pile of things to do. It's always the thing that feels the most rush. And it really is, in some ways, one of the most important time efforts that you need to put into it. If you throw together a quick, 5-slide deck and you don't plan for your meeting or you don't plan for your presentation, the users aren't going to be engaged. They're going to be bored. They're going to think that, this isn't really important. The company's just making me do it. They're not going to take anything away from it. But if you've got the time to put into building the program out, whether that's the individual content that you're working on, or even, more importantly, thinking about it from soup to nuts, a lot of times we don't have time to sit and think about, how do I take the user on this cybersecurity journey? All of us as practitioners, we've spent years, developing our knowledge and understanding, what the we learn through experience, we learn through time, we learn through mentoring, and we're expecting our users to jump into that, same kind of, not necessarily that level, but that same kind of enthusiasm in maybe 50 minutes. 50 is generous, right? And so we've got to really look at how do we take them from infancy in the security world all the way up to a mature cybersecurity practitioner while they're doing their other job. And that's not something you can do if you just spend 15 minutes a month or 15 minutes a week even developing your program and putting attention on that. A lot of the tools that we have are great tools, and as far as, the internal phishing or even some of the automated or pre-canned awareness tools that we have out there for the content. But again, if it's a set it and forget it, or the analyst or the program director doesn't necessarily have a vision, they just go in, they flip some levers. Again, you don't know if your users are being engaged with that or if they're just seeing it as, okay, here's more content that gets in the way of me doing my work.
And I have a feeling we're spoiling a little bit of what we're going to be talking about in the main segment, but I
probably a little bit, yeah.
That's all right. It's a good teaser. So Hutch, what's your thinking on this?
I think for me, one of the most challenging parts of this is that we as security professionals and really working in technology a lot, with most problems, there generally is a best way to go about things, kind of your best practices. And with creating a culture of security awareness, I think there's a lot of elements that come into play, such as just social psychology, where there are a lot of different schools of thought, and there isn't necessarily that exact best practice. And so, I mean, I think what I've seen most organizations do is kind of take the Pavlov's dogs approach. You ring the bell, they start salivating. So very similarly, you want to get your employees to a point where they receive that phishing email and immediately they report it, or immediately they send it up the chain for action. But what I think is the more complicated part of that puzzle is figuring out how to drive that right response, whether that is positive reinforcement, where we are providing some kind of incentive for people to report those up consistently. Or I've seen a lot of organizations that take the negative reinforcement approach, some that are more timid about it and will just do something like maybe after you fail a phishing test so many times, you have to do remedial training, all the way up to, I've seen some organizations that have an absolutely draconian approach about it, and you fail a couple phishing tests and you're out the door. So I think finding that right balance of positive and negative reinforcement and really figuring out how to appeal to the psychology of the environment that you're working in. And that actually may even be different from one industry to another, or one type of business context to another. But I think that's really the most challenging part of building that security culture.
Yep.
If I could jump in on that, because Hutch, I think you really nailed it. You know, when we start talking about culture, those draconian methods, is that really the culture that you want in your company for other aspects other than just awareness and training, right? And that's, I think, what this article is really talking about, you know, culture, and how does that apply to everything with focus on awareness and training.
Yeah, to your point, I think there's unquestionably, in the environments that I have seen that take that draconian approach, there definitely is in a lot of cases a hit to morale that comes with that as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Well, guys, that's great discussion. Some of that does automatically kind of transfer over into the security awareness space, but that culture does have a huge effect all the way around, not just security awareness, but just how individuals react to it. So let's see how much of that we get into in the next article, or in the next article, but in the main segment. So now we are going to get into something a little more deep geek with Hutch, which is normally what he brings to the table. So Hutch, why don't you get into your article? Let's have some talking about it.
Right. So my article is on the new Petit Patam, or I think, Michael, you said Petit Patam. So I'm actually not sure which one.
I'm from Mississippi, man. You can't rely on
the pronunciation here. But what it is a new relay attack that allows an attacker to interrogate the Windows EFS remote procedural call and use that in conjunction with a relay attack, which ultimately grants the attacker a Kerberos ticket granting ticket from the KRB TGT account. And that ticket allows them to execute code at essentially any privilege level, to include with the level of privilege of the domain controller. So what is exciting for me as a penetration tester, at the same time should be terrifying for anybody on the blue team. This is one of those vulnerabilities where you absolutely should have your team internally scrambling to figure out how you're going to close this door, because this is the type of situation where and I guess I should caveat that with pointing out some of the conditions that need to exist in your environment for this to be exploitable. But essentially, any environment that is running on an Active Directory domain that has its own Windows PKI environment with the web service enabled will be vulnerable. And that is a lot of environments. So this is one where essentially any attacker that gets access to the network, not credentials, not even a low privileged account, just access to the network, can go from that to instantly having domain admin level privilege and owning everything that falls within the scope of that Active Directory domain. So again, this is one that I absolutely encourage people to figure out immediately what you're doing something about. Microsoft did release an emergency patch, so that is available. Hopefully this emergency patch, unlike the recent one that they had with Print Nightmare, actually works out of the box. So, but But yeah, it's definitely one that I expect that myself and everybody that works on my team doing penetration testing will be using for the foreseeable future for organizations that haven't patched.
Well, those are my big questions. One, circumstances, how achievable was this attack? How prevalent is it going to be? It sounds like it's not only bad, but definitely usable and pretty extensive out there, which makes a lot of sense. And then two, I guess, and maybe dive into that a little bit deeper. Do you see this as being something that's in the class of those attacks that you're going to be finding 5 years from now?
I think so, because of the fact that it is an internal vulnerability, and you still have so many organizations these days that are focusing on their perimeter. This is not a vulnerability that's going to be exploited from the web, but this is a vulnerability that the second that somebody has internal access, whether they just get a low privileged foot in the door from a phishing attack or manage to somehow get onto the physical network, it's game over at that point. And I unfortunately, I think that there's going to be a lot of organizations that just sweep it under the rug because it's behind that external firewall, and everything behind that firewall is safe, right?
It's trusted traffic all the time.
There you go.
The old igloo mentality. Adam, what do you just think about this depressing news?
I love articles like this, right? They just, it makes me feel how I'm sure most management outside of IT feels when you start talking about vulnerabilities, right? Because I feel like everything's just, what are we supposed to do if there's no fix? Now, luckily, we've got the emergency patch, but before that, right? But if you look at it, it's always the summer of Microsoft. So the fact that we've got a major Microsoft vulnerability coming up, midsummer, it's not that unusual. I think we had the same thing happening last year and the year before. This one is scary, though. A lot of organizations, that's kind of their fallback is, hey, if we had a major breach or if we have a major concern, we're going to go back and reset that granting ticket, and we're going to be good, right? And now we're saying, okay, that's not even good enough. So we can't even advocate for, hey, let's at least make an exercise to reset the TGT once a year, because even then, that's gonna fall prey. So it just goes to show that as much as we rely on our backbone, that's where we've really got to focus those internal resources. Quite honestly, and it can be scary, but at the same time, we can't let fear motivate everything we do, right?
Yep. Well, it's I don't know. I mean, there's not much else to say about it. It's definitely one that people are going to be using forever. And if you just add it to your box of tricks and bag of tricks, and you've got Privesk anytime you can get in, it's I don't know what else can be said. It's scary. Go patch, people. Please go patch, and then don't trust everything internally inside the firewall, because that does not work very well. Okay. I'm going to go into mine real quick. Again, I don't know if anybody, again, is listening or watching and knows if there's been an update to this. Let me get an article and I'll see why, or you can see why I'm asking this. So Kaseya says they now have an REvil decryption key and that it actually works. So there had been quite a few people who had said that the current decryption did not work. REvil is known for putting out decryption keys that don't work when they hit people with ransomware. So they say this one works. What I haven't seen is an update, and I haven't checked this article and haven't seen any other updates on how they actually got the decryption key. Did they pay the ransom? Did somebody else pay the ransom? Did REvil just give it up because they're on the run, like supposedly a lot of ransomware gangs are right now, or either that or they're all out on the beach celebrating their victories and enjoying the fruits of their labor. But one way or the other, Kaseya says they now have a decryption key, and they're able to help their customers out that are using their technology, using their tools. I don't know. I mean, it's not a huge, really long article about it, other than it kind of brings up the other ransomware issues that are happening out there, which we all know are the kind of the scourge of the internet right now. But hopefully they're right. Hopefully it works. Hopefully they can get some people working and kind of get ahead of this. So Adam, I don't know if you got any thoughts about this one.
Yeah, I read the trusted third party piece, probably a little bit different than you. To me that read as, yeah, they had paid some amount. But again, you're right. It doesn't spell it out. It's hard to say. I don't think anybody will probably ever come forward unless they truly had a back end kind of way of getting that key, and own up to whether they paid or not and how much they paid. But yeah, it's it's that fine line, and when you're in the position of having to make that decision, it's always a hard one, because you know what the right thing is to do. Don't pay them, but you know what the best thing is sometimes to do, which is get back to operational as quick as possible.
Hutch, what do you think?
I was honestly very surprised to see that our evil is using a universal key for all of their victims. These guys are supposed to be for lack of a better metaphor, the Rolls Royce of ransomware. Is like they're supposed to be like the biggest threat, and the fact that they're not using unique keys, because you have to assume if you're a ransomware organization and you've infected a specific company, in order for them to decrypt, whether you're giving them a decryption tool that has that hard-coded key in it or you're giving them the key directly, even if it's a tool, they can easily enough reverse engineer that and get the key out of it. The likelihood that once one organization has that, they're going to start sharing it out and making it public to allow other people to decrypt for free kind of destroys their business model. So I guess I was just very surprised by the lack of complexity and the fact that this wasn't thought through by the Our Evil group.
It's interesting you say that, because I don't know how many people watch and listen to Patrick Gray's Risky Business podcast. It's one of my favorite ones. He always covers a lot of good news stuff, and it has some really good vendor interviews that he does. But one of the things that he's brought up consistently on there is that people see these ransomware as just they tend to equate them with like APTs, and they're generally not as sophisticated of an attack, and the groups aren't as sophisticated as larger ones, because it's kind of a easier way to go about. It's like any business, you keep your costs low so that you can get more profit out of it. Maybe, but yeah, that does seem like a basic thing, Hutch, that you don't want to do, which is it's basically like any kind of shared password, right? Oh, I just stuck the same password everywhere. So yeah, I don't know.
If you're a security organization, use unique keys. If you're a ransomware organization, use unique keys.
Or don't.
But wasn't that a big part of the huge amount of the request for the ransomware, was that they promised they could provide the universal? So it seems like they almost had that planned, to begin with, of stick in the universal key so that they could ransom. Or maybe I misread that, but that was my thought.
Yeah, I didn't. That's a good question. I don't know. I would think that you're trying to you want different variants of your ransomware. You want different keys of for your ransomware to unlock. So if you hit this organization, they can't share it with somebody else unless they're just business model is just to go hit the world as quickly as possible, get everybody locked down, and then have them all pay at the same time. But yeah, I don't know. That's a good question now.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, I think we are at the end of our news articles. So take a breath, everybody. Stretch a little bit. If you're live and you're still here, thank you for staying on with us. Haven't seen any questions come up, but that's fine. This is our first one. So if you got any questions for us, let us know. And we're going to jump right into the main segment with Adam. So the reason I wanted Adam to come on is a while back, he and I and his Such Solutions account manager sat down and just had a discussion over coffee about security awareness. Adam's got kind of a passion, or not kind of, he has a passion for security awareness. It is something that he likes to to bring into a lot of discussions. We had a great discussion for probably a good 45 minutes about what his thoughts were in the industry. So I really wanted to bring Adam on to talk about it, have a good discussion about it. So Adam, I'm just going to start with my first question, and let's just see where it goes. So give us what you consider to be your definition of security awareness.
Yeah, well, I've been thinking about that a lot, quite honestly, because there are so many ways you can approach it and think about it. And I'm really starting to land more and more on the HSE model, right? You talk to anybody that has any kind of physical threat or physical risk to their employees. HSE becomes something that's just ingrained into everyday life, your health, safety, and environment, right? And so coming from the oil and gas industry like I did, obviously HSE is huge, and it's something that, even the office workers have to learn how to call a stop to a job in a plant or in the, in the oil field or whatever. And to me, that's, where we should be aiming for when we talk about cybersecurity awareness. The threat to the company, the threat to the financials, even the threat to the individual is on par. Now, there's no loss of life, and there's no hopefully grievous bodily injury that can happen if a personal cyber attack. But at the same time, we have seen cyber attacks have physical impact in the past. So, I think that the threat is on par with what we see on the health and safety side of things, and we don't take health and safety for granted, and in our training and in what we give to the users and how we educate them. And I think that's really where we need to go with cyber training. It needs to be ubiquitous. We need to make sure that our users respect the company's stance on cyber training, and we need to make sure that they come in to their day-to-day job with that in, the back of their mind. And it's not just about protecting the company at that point. It's about a way of life of protecting themselves. So to me, security awareness training is, right up there with, knowing where the fire escapes are, knowing how to, shut down an unsafe environment, how to, take care of the employees and help protect them as well as protect the company.
So coming at it from an HSE perspective, then, do you think it needs to come from the HR department, or does it need to come from the cybersecurity department?
I haven't seen an HSE training come from HR for quite a while. And I would say that I don't think cyber training should come from HR either. Nothing against HR. Certainly love what they do and feel, their impact and the need for them, but they've got enough to deal with, quite honestly, and they're not experts in the field or in the area. And so, yeah, if you want to give, the management and the scheduling of that to another group because you feel like you have to because of resources or whatever, I think you're making a mistake with your company to do so. I think you've got a cybersecurity group, you've got a program in place, whether that's a full team or whether that's a couple of folks or even just one person, but they really need to be hands-on with your cybersecurity awareness training program. They're going to know what's trending are, and they're going to know what's happening inside as well. We can train users how not to take certain risks or do certain activities, but if those aren't things that are actively being exploited within your environment, maybe you shouldn't spend as much time focusing on those, and you should focus on low-hanging fruit, like clicking a link in a phishing email or whatever. Your cybersecurity team is going to know that through the tools and the metrics that they're able to pull from that, HR or any other, non-connected team is not going to be able to gather. So
just like in plant security in oil and gas or something like that, you shouldn't hand that to HR. Same thing with cyber, but from a centralized pushing it out to everyone, a lot of people use HR systems. So should it be mainly just, hey, this is what you're going to do through the HR system, and then as far as the management from that point, it should be the cyber system, or the cyber security folks?
And by HR systems, I mean, I guess you're talking more about like the LMS platforms and those kind of things, and the ways to mark the compliance of the training and that kind of stuff, and how it's delivered in the policy behind it, or are you talking beyond that?
The policy and everything. I'm thinking just from a just from a system standpoint of you come on, you get onboarded, you go through some type of HR system because that gives you all your paperwork and all of that. And in my past, as being a security manager in the past, we did security awareness training. That all came in when everybody was a new employee. I got to give that to all the new employees, and then we would annually do it from there on. But all of the scheduling of that to get it done and to keep track of it getting done always had to go through HR to make sure you had a centralized compliance place.
Yeah, and I think in the right size organization, I think that makes sense, quite honestly, because there's a lot to go on, and we tend to be a little gung-ho in the cyber world, and especially if you've got somebody that's passionate like me about awareness and training, they might have a tendency to overload the system a little bit, right? And so having the HR component there helps to make sure that things are measured and rolled out in the proper fashion without overloading the user. But at the same time, it has to be a collaboration. And that's really, where I come from with a lot of this is everything is about collaboration. And we in the security space certainly understand this, that we don't operate within a void. Nothing we do is simply within the walls of our own, domain. And so same thing has to happen with security awareness training. We have to collaborate. And so, if that means that your CSAT program manager works directly with HR for the scheduling and the onboarding and getting the content into the right systems or laid out in the correct way, then absolutely that should happen.
Hutch, what do you got?
I guess I'll take kind of a contrarian perspective, because to be honest, I am somewhat of a pessimist when it comes to awareness training. And what I mean by that is I feel like it's, as I mentioned earlier, an extremely difficult problem. And there's a couple other things that I think were worth drawing attention to. One is that I feel like a lot of times awareness training is trying to teach people to do the opposite of human nature. And I feel like human nature is to give people the benefit of the doubt, to assume that their intentions are good, and getting people to go against that natural instinct is itself extremely hard to do. And I think the other problem is that even when you do accomplish that, it becomes a problem of scale, of the fact that you have to essentially, it becomes almost an all or nothing thing, because I can send out 1,000 phishing emails, and as long as one person clicks that link or executes the malware, you have the foothold in the door. So I think, don't get me wrong, I think that there is a huge importance on information awareness or information security awareness, but I think that it also absolutely has to be taken into consideration within the context of other compensating controls. And because I think that it's trying to get to that 100% is so absolutely difficult.
Yeah, and that's a huge challenge, Hutch, quite honestly. Yeah, because you're right. All it takes is one mistake, right? It takes one user, and all of your awareness training can go down the drain, and the attacker can be inside your all of your defenses quickly and easily. I think building that culture of security awareness helps as far as combating that human nature. I would rephrase it and say that I think the biggest human nature thing that we have to combat is the wanting to help. Right. I think as humans, that's the first thing we want to do, is we want to help. And so if you send me an email, makes it sound like I can help you, absolutely, I'm going to fall victim to that. And so
let me open the door for you.
Yeah, exactly. So, if we can ingrain that culture to where that willingness to help, it gets tempered with just being proactively empowered. In my role, and this is with different places that I've been, it's not that the users don't know when something looks fishy. It's just they're not confident in their own abilities to make that decision. And so giving them the empowerment to know, yes, this is fishy and I can't ignore that. I don't have to help this person. It does help to combat that human nature, and it helps them to know, hey, you're helping the company, you're helping yourself now at this point. Are you going to get to 100%? never. As much as we'd like to say that we, strive for that, but even if somebody makes the mistake, if the culture is right, hopefully they'll come back and let you know they made that mistake, so you can scramble the defenses a little bit quicker than just, oh crap, I clicked on that link and the web page came up and I put in my credentials and don't tell anybody and maybe they won't know it was me, kind of thing.
So that's an interesting thought, and I've never even considered this, but the perspective of having some kind of program that encourages people to own up to it whenever they have kind of made that mistake.
Absolutely. I think to me, that's one of the most important things is having the freedom to make mistakes from time to time. You talked about earlier that draconian kind of approach, and I've worked for companies that, they've had that draconian approach that if you make a mistake, if your cyber training, wasn't up to snuff and you messed up, man, you'd feel the impact of it. You'd lose internet access, or you'd, be put on notice or whatever. And we don't encourage our users then at that point to want to be secure. We're encouraging them to want to not make a mistake. We're going to make mistakes. Everybody's going to make mistakes. From the most hardened security professional down is going to make mistakes. And so we have to open that up and we have to let them know, hey, it's good that you let us know when you make that mistake so we can go in and take the appropriate steps.
Yeah, I think to your point, that draconian approach would probably discourage anybody from actually reporting up if they did make that mistake. They're
absolutely
fear of their jobs.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, if you came up in the old South like I did, and you spilt something on the floor, you don't know if there was going to be a hand following it after you did it. Right. It's like it's kind of hard to get over that. That idea of not getting in trouble for something. So, so thanks for the definition, Adam. That's a great discussion. What I do want to kind of get into, and I think my camera may have just gone dead. So y'all continue talking, and I'm going to go see if I can wake my camera up. This is the fun of live streaming.
No worries.
Well, here, talk about this. Talk about what I was getting to, and I'll try to wake my camera up. Is talking about some of the new technologies. So when I posted something on LinkedIn a while back, we had a mutual friend of ours, Drew Rose, get on. I was kind of wondering about kind of the quote unquote, just to use the term, next gen cybersecurity awareness products that are out there that are maybe helping with some of these issues.
Yeah, and I've been really excited about the advances that we're seeing in what the content looks like, right, for a long time now. And that's, to go back to, you mentioned Drew, and, they really kind of, to me anyway, really kind of pioneered some of this gamified in-person interactive training with their cyber escape rooms, and they've grown since then. When you look at KnowBe4 and their content, and they're creating, Mr. Robot level video content that is now streaming on Amazon because it's so good, and the message and the acting and everything just fits nicely together. We've come a long way from next, yes, I accept and I understand that I'm liable and blah 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 kind of stuff that we've seen in the past. And the advances in content are great, and I hope that we continue to see that go forward. But what really starts to excite me is now we can tailor that content because we do have such a good variety of it out there, but we can also then start to wrap that into the user behavior as well. And as we start to see more of these platforms integrate into our overall systems, I think we're really going to start to see the new era and the next gen of cybersecurity awareness training. I've had discussions with content providers and platform owners before about, if a user clicks, it's great that me watching, from the dashboard can see that, and then I have to come up with what the next steps are. Why can't we throw some automation into that? If a user clicks on a phishing email, not only do we give them then follow up or whatever that next step is, but let's take some steps to maybe get some extra eyes around their activity. Maybe that was just a one-time, mistake that they made, or maybe they've been making that mistake and it's gone unnoticed, long enough that we should be paying some more attention to what's happening on their device or what's happening from their network connection. So as we start to see that next gen integration, I think that's really where we're going to start to see closer and closer to that 100% that Hutch talked about. Because yeah, they can make the mistake, but if then we have, all guns come online at that point, so to speak, we have better defenses around that user while we mitigate and understand how that got to that mistake being made.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. I think the gamification stuff is great. One of them that I think is particularly entertaining is the backdoors and breaches card game is another way that they've done that. I think also the use of ongoing persistent testing of phishing and stuff like that. And then one thing that I think doesn't get enough credit, but you're seeing more and more in a lot of different environments, is just the integration of a lot of those different phishing testing solutions with some kind of plugin that just goes into your email client that makes reporting to security so much easier. So in the past, you used to you'd get a phishing email and you would have to craft up an email to security and forward that on to them explaining what you received. And now it's as easy as just you receive that email and you take 2 seconds to click report phishing and it auto generates everything and sends it over. And I think just minimizing the level of effort required to do that reporting significantly increases the likelihood that security does become in the know whenever something like that is happening.
But, the flip side of that coin, and I absolutely agree with you. I'm not trying to say that I don't, but the flip side of that coin is the easier we make it for the users to report, the more difficult we make it for the security analyst at that point, unless we start to build in some of that automation. So if I have 50 users and 10 of them craft a personal email and send it on, that's 10 tickets, that the analysts have to investigate. If we put the easy button in and 50 users then click the easy button because it's just that much easier, suddenly I've, 5 times as much work on my analyst. They have to then validate, even if it's something simple like, yes, that is obviously your Aunt Mary asking you to meet her at, Panera tonight. You're okay to respond, right? But we have to find a way to lessen that load. I don't want to discourage the user, but we have to find that automation that lessens the load on the analyst, because as was pointed out, time is a major issue when it comes to building out an awareness program, but then also money, and no company that I've ran into is going to let you staff up a security awareness team to the nth degree. So you've got to be able to keep it manageable. So yeah.
I think one of those tools that we looked at a while back, and I don't know if we never were in a way we could manage to test it just because it was a difficult thing to do. But there was I think it was from Agari, where they had a solution where they would sit in front of the phishing reporting. And because they said, to your point, Adam, they said they had so many customers that their email analysts would see all that, and they just ended up ignoring the phishing reporting because they had all of a sudden they had so many more alerts. So they sat in front of it and tried to validate some of that stuff and weed out a lot of the false reports and just get rid of them through some another AI ML case. But essentially that's what they were trying to do. And I thought it was interesting how they were trying to combat that to reduce it without just getting rid of the button.
Yeah, and there are some other players in that field. There are some folks who will automate, taking that email, throwing it into a sandbox, and then sending over the verdict email back, and those kind of things. I think what I've noticed anyway is there's a lack of evangelizing in that area, and so a lot of security practitioners don't know, hey, help is right there. You just have to reach out and grab it, and yeah, you have to pay for it. But at the end of the day, you can find the solution. It is out there. But again, we spend 15 minutes a week at best thinking about our security awareness program. So how much of that 15 minutes do you think that is being dedicated to tool searching as well?
Yeah. Well, and it's interesting because we're going on and on and on about phishing, and it makes sense because that's a major avenue for attacks. But what we talked about earlier was that whole help mentality and some of these tools that are coming out that are making you more aware. And it's not just, it's almost a more approachable type of method. So like one of them that I've seen is specifically is Ninjio. And Ninjio has done these cartoons, but one of them is done in kind of a new, and it's not just this, but makes it a little more approachable, I think, for a newer generation and an older generation, where you've got some of the new stuff is done in kind of like an anime style. And then you've got some of the stuff that's done in the old 80s cartoon style. And I don't know if y'all have seen He-Man that came out on Netflix, but it's really good. But it brings you back to some of that nostalgic way of looking at stuff. And it just having that kind of connection where you can go, okay, I now know that this is a little more fun maybe to watch, a little more easy to watch. And I can find out things about not just phishing, but I don't know. There's an attack I've seen that somebody, I can't remember her name off the top of my head, but she would do physical attacks and go in and wear like a pregnancy suit and walk in and look like she had some boxes that she needed to help her. And she actually had like all kinds of different hacking tools up into this pregnancy thing that she could go plug in anywhere. And who in their right mind is not going to help this poor lady trying to get into somewhere when she's, clearly like 8 months pregnant or something? I mean, you're going to do it. It's just human nature. But
your physical
things like these new tools can, maybe make that a little more approachable and people will actually engage. So,
yeah, I think, one of the things that I struggle with, being that I'm not millennial or younger, is how do I keep it fresh, right? We look at the workforce, it's diverse. There's, content is not just focused on what I grew up with, 80s nostalgia, et cetera. Yeah, so I look at some of the newer content and I'm like, well, that doesn't appeal to me. But I think it's really important that your CSAT program focuses on your employee base and make sure that we're appealing to everyone, and you have to know the user to know that as well, right? You can't just say, okay, everybody gets to watch this anime, for instance, the Ninja kind of content. Everybody watches the anime content and has to learn from it. Well, that's not going to be as effective. Whereas if you can tailor that content, if you can make sure that you're taking the user into account, that's certainly going to be an important aspect of it. And not just in the type of content, as far as the presentation style, but then also what level of training are you providing? Nobody that I've seen anyway, other than very focused, separate kind of training, is really looking at how do I train my financial team versus how do I train my help desk team versus how do I train my incident response team. We have individual, on the IT side, we have individual training courses and groups that are spun up to teach red blue team kind of activity, but we've got a whole group of users who just get lumped in together. And again, we really got to look at tailoring the content, tailoring the message, and tailoring the awareness based upon the role.
It's a great point. It really is. Well, guys, I don't mean to cut this short because this is a great discussion, but I have to. And obviously my camera keeps having issues, so I got to figure out what's going on there. Hopefully Lauren can fix that post-production, or just let it go, Lauren. Let's just have fun with it. So,
I think a nice graphic.
We're going to cut this off, guys. Adam, thank you very much for coming in and joining us. Like I said before we started recording, hopefully you can come in to the studios next time we have you on. I think this is a great topic. It's one of those that's kind of universal, right? It's not just speeds and feeds or packets and bits and bytes. It talks across the board. So I appreciate your time.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. I always love to talk about this, so try to keep me quiet.
I won't even try. I will not try. Well, Hutch, thank you, sir, for coming on the first live stream. I'm glad you made it from Iowa and glad you had good internet access and had less technical difficulties than I did. So that's good.
Yep. Thank you. It was a pleasure as always.
Appreciate it. Lauren, thank you for producing. We appreciate it. I know you probably are just bored to tears over there listening to us drone on about this, but thank you very much.
Yeah, the camera changes kept it exciting. So
there you go. Yeah, I saw your face kind of like go, uh-oh, what's going on? What did he do? I did not kick a cable, people. I got to figure out what's wrong with my camera over there. It keeps timing out. So before it times out again, I will shut this down. Thank you for joining the live stream, first live stream, and for joining us on episode 33 of Ready, Set, Secure, Set Solutions Podcast. I'm Michael Farnum, CTO with Set Solutions, signing off. See you on episode 34.